Whelan Presley Funeral Home and Crematory, a proud supporter of WQPT, has been serving Quad City families since 1889. They now have live stream capabilities for viewing your loved one's funeral or memorial service.
At IHM VCU, we've always been here for you. You are and always will be our top priority. We care about your financial and physical health, and we are here. IHM VCU is a proud supporter of WQPT.
Trying to draw a map by committee and what to do with kids after they've served their time behind bars in the cities. Is there a key to breaking the cycle of criminality that can turn our children into hardened prisoners? One program in the cities is teaming up with others to do just that. But first, Iowa's attempt to be fair in the lines it draws. In state after state, redistricting is occurring under tight deadlines and scant information from the U.S. Census. In Illinois, it's led to at least 3 lawsuits filed against the plan that was passed by Democrats and signed by Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker. But Iowa is very different. First off, nonpartisan legislative staff members create the maps for the Iowa House and Senate, as well as the U.S. House districts. Only then does the legislature vote on the plans. But there's more to the process than that. And we sat down with the newest member of the Temporary Redistricting Advisory Commission, Davenport attorney and president of the Davenport chapter of LULAC, Jasmine Newton. Tell me what work you have ahead of you.
Thank you for having me. So the role of the commission has 2 primary duties in the state of Iowa. So the Track Commission has duties pursuant to the Iowa Code 42.6. The first is to appoint a chair. So the commission is made up of 5 members. The first 4 are appointed by the House and the Senate. Each political party gets to appoint 1. So that's how we end up with our first 4. And then the job of the 4 is to appoint a chair. So that is the first thing we'll have to do, is appoint a chair. Pursuant to Iowa Code 69.16, there has to be gender balance. So currently I'm the only woman on the commission. That means that our chair must be a woman. So that's our first thing. The second duty, and one that is more publicly known, is that it is our duty to establish a report that we will bring to the General Assembly regarding the public's comments. We have to have at least 3 public hearings that's required by the code regarding the redistricting process.
This is so much different, as you know, than other states. It's really pretty much taken out of the hands of the politicians until the very end. I mean, you're a student of government and a student of Iowa government as well. Do you like this system?
I do think it's a good system. I think that what shows that it's worked. So since the enactment of the nonpartisan approach in 1980, we have not needed any court intervention in Iowa. And that's certainly different than what we see in other states, including our neighbor across the river.
So in that way, I would assume you like the system, but here's the thing, is that critics say this should be a political issue. This should be something that there's a little fight between the parties in order to draw the lines.
Well, I do not believe that politicians at the Capitol should be able to pick their voters. I do think that the way this process was set up in the state of Iowa was meant to be a fair process.
And let's talk about that for a moment, because you said in some states, and it's very true, is that politicians get involved and they get to pick the voters, as you say, which would be either a Democrat or Republican. But also in a lot of these systems that we see in other states, it's really protecting incumbents as well.
And that is correct. But we don't see that in Iowa. So Iowa Code Section 42.4 sets out the standards for the redistricting. And the process needs to be fair. And we want to end up with maps that are compact, contiguous, and preserve political subdivisions. What we can't have, and that's prohibited by the code, is maps that are meant to favor an incumbent or a political party.
Well, and you do see in so many states what has always been called gerrymandering, which is almost ageless in the United States, where you have these weirdly drawn lines. That's another thing that Iowa does. As far as the congressional districts are concerned, it seems to follow county lines. And then when it comes to the legislative districts, Is there any particular rule? Because that's much more difficult to divide.
Yes, the code does point to how the lines should be drawn and the standards that need to be followed by the legislative service agency, who is the one that actually comes up with the map and the proposed bill on the districts, this redistricting.
Tell me what the impact will be of the census numbers coming in so late. It's really putting a crunch on a lot of states.
Yes, we're seeing a huge impact because of the census numbers not being reported yet. Typically, we would have seen the numbers come in February or March, and as we sit here today, we still don't have the numbers. The Census Bureau has released a statement that in the interim data product, also known as a legacy summary file, should be released by August 16th of this year. And then we're hoping to have the final, the actual redistricting data from the census by September 30th of this year. Now, the issue that poses for Iowa is that the Iowa Constitution sets a deadline of September 15th by which the redistricting law must be signed and enacted. And unfortunately, it's unclear if we're going to be able to meet that deadline this year.
So what do you think is going to happen? Are you going to be, I mean, I know there's crystal balls involved here, but I mean, it almost sounds like it's a foregone conclusion there's going to have to be a request of some kind of an extension in Iowa.
So in Iowa, the Constitution actually sets forth what happens if we don't meet the deadline. So if the law, or essentially if the redistricting is not enacted into law by September 15th, the Supreme Court of Iowa has to take over. Earlier this year, on April 8th, the Supreme Court of Iowa did come out with a statement, certainly not a ruling because they can't do so because it's not yet an issue before the court, but a little bit of a tentative guidance that if such did come to the Supreme Court, it would likely still try to follow the process set forth in the Iowa Code, but simply expanding the timeline. So that's all we have at this time. Based on the statement issued by the Supreme Court, would be my opinion that likely what we would see come September 15th would be further guidance from the Supreme Court that we continue with the process that's been laid forth, but simply changing the deadlines than those previously set.
I want to take you over the last 6 years. You take a look at the last couple of congressional election cycles in Iowa, where we had a congressional district, or rather congressional contingent that had 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat. Then it swung the other way around, and now it has basically swung back. Does that show you that the system for Iowa picking its congressional districts and drawing the lines works because there isn't one-party domination, it appears, in Iowa?
I think if we look at the last several congressional cycles, it would certainly lead to that conclusion that the redistricting was done in such a way that did allow for that fairness because it's not showing dominance by one party or the other.
As you said, it's important for you to be on this advisory commission because you're a woman. That's the least of your qualifications, of course. You're also an attorney, but you also have that connection with LULAC. How are you going to use that connection, the Hispanic heritage, to your advantage when you're on this commission?
I wouldn't say so much that it would be used as an advantage. I wear a lot of hats. Aside from woman, attorney, I wear the hat of a mother, a small business owner, a very involved community member, and also I'm involved with LULAC and other community organizations. I take my representation on this board being that my first and foremost duty is to represent Iowans. I am committed to ensuring that all Iowans have fair maps for legislative and congressional districts. I want to ensure that all Iowans, including minority groups, are aware of the public hearings and can attend and express their opinions. Furthermore, the Iowa Code, Section 42.4, also does state forth that maps that are drawn in a way that prohibits maps to be drawn in a way that would either be for the purpose of augmenting or diluting the voting strength of a language or racial minority group. So sitting on this commission, I will make sure that that is brought forth and that we make sure that the maps are drawn in such a way that is fair, and for them to be fair, they should be drafted in such a way that conforms with Iowa Code 42.4.
That's interesting because, as you know, in Illinois 10 years ago, there was a lawsuit that was victorious, as a matter of fact, because they didn't think the Illinois lines represented some districts and some racial populations very well, particularly Hispanics in the Chicago area. So when you draw the lines in Iowa, is that not a consideration of any type? It's basically counting the numbers of people?
That's how it should be. I mean, the consideration is that they can't be done in such a way to dilute the voting strength of a minority group. And the lines are drawn by the Legislative Service Agency. And they put forth the proposed maps essentially in the first plan.
Nonetheless, are you hoping to hear from minority representatives during these public hearings that you're going to be holding?
Absolutely. I'm hoping to hear from a wide range of Iowans from all walks of life. And I think that is very important. This happens every 10 years, and it's important that their voice be heard. Similarly to it's very important that all Iowans vote in every election. So I'm hoping we get a lot of people out to these public hearings and that they express their opinion.
Well, as you know, the calendar is getting tighter and tighter for you right now, and you're still waiting for one more board members. But do you have an idea of when the hearings might be held in our area and where they might be held?
I do not have an idea yet. I know that we will be meeting in the near future to just have the discussion of appointing our chair so that then we can move forward. But yes, the timeline is getting very, very small for us. So we have a lot of work to do in a very short period of time.
On another topic, let's talk about the Hispanic vote very quickly, because what we saw in 2020 was that the Hispanic vote is not monolithic. There's very conservative Hispanics. There are very liberal, progressive Hispanics. Is that like a message that you really want to get out there as president of LULAC? Is that, you know, it isn't just one mindset that you represent?
Well, first of all, that's correct. As we saw from the 2020 election, Latinos are a very, very diverse group of people, and we have Latinos on all spectrums of the political line. And unfortunately, I think sometimes the message that gets sent is that Latinos are more liberal or so forth, but we truthfully have a wide variety and a range of political views within the Latino and Hispanic community. And I think such was illustrated when we saw voting patterns come in from the 2020 presidential election.
So very true. But the other thing that was really interesting, too, as you well know, is that the Hispanic voting population continues to increase across America. But registration and actual participation was lagging. Were you happy with the way 2020 went as far as the Hispanic population actually getting out and voting? It didn't even matter who they voted for.
No, that's correct. One of the things that LULAC has concentrated on is voter engagement, civic engagement, and we want to get more people registered to vote. We're not satisfied with the numbers that we saw. We know there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we'll continue to do the work because again, that's very important that we get everyone to vote. It is a fundamental right that they should exercise.
Jasmine Newton, member of Iowa's Temporary Redistricting Advisory Commission. In a moment, stopping a life of crime. But first, we're in the heart of summer right now, so time to hear from Laura Adams, who has great ideas for you, your family, your friends, everybody who wants to go out and about.
This is Out and About for July 19th through 26th. The 47th running of the Bix 7 takes place in downtown Davenport the 24th at 8 a.m., while the Junior Bix takes place the 23rd at 6 p.m. The QC Senior Olympics kick off at Augustana College, the 25th running through the 31st. Plus, it's time for the 150th Rock Island County Fair at the Fairgrounds in East Moline on the 20th, running through the 24th. Each Friday, check out Mercado on 5th in downtown Moline, while North of 40 performs Thursday night the 22nd at the Bass Street Landing Summer Concert Series. Live at 5, Courtyard Series at RME features the Blackstones on the 23rd, and the Concert Series at Veterans Memorial Park presents Big River Brass on the 23rd. The Moline Township Activity Center Summer Concert in the Park present North of 40 on the 26th, while there's comedy with Brooks Whelan, who performs at Tomfoolery on Tremont. Timberlake Playhouse continues their run of Jesus Christ Superstar at the Mount Carroll Theater through August 1st, and Saturday Night Fever brings The Night Fever to Circa 21. Genesius Guild perform Euripides, translated by Ian Johnson, at Lincoln Park through the 25th, while August Wilson's classic The Piano Lesson graces the Playcrafters stage through the 24th. And finally, Lauren Gunderson's beautiful play I and You completes their run at the Black Box Theater on the 24th. For more information, visit WQPT.org.
Thank you, Laura. The Bucktown Review is updating its website each Thursday with some new performances of their own special blend of music from Americana. The Review tuned up the banjo, guitar, and fiddle, though, to bring us their rendition of Eels in the Sink.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Bucktown Review, Eels in the Sink. Let's be honest, we must break the cycle of crime where children and young adults are convicted of wrongdoing. They serve their time in juvenile homes, jails, or prison, and then are left to their own devices once released, only to continue the cycle. Safer Foundation, trying to change that, and is teaming up with Black Hawk College and Eastern Iowa Community Colleges to get these offenders on the right track. And they're seeing success. Joining us is Brian Monroe, Resource Development Director with Safer Foundation. Brian, you know that the public is really kind of frustrated with this almost revolving door when it comes to juvenile justice, when we're looking at particularly car thefts and things like that. You deal with youth offenders all the time. What do you say to people's frustration?
Well, we share that, I guess, that sense of frustration. It's something that Safer is frankly designed from our beginning back in the 70s to relieve that potential. Everything that we do is geared toward reducing individuals reoffending, or what in the industry is termed recidivism, or going back to prison or going back into the system. So it's a legitimate concern. From our standpoint, the population that we work with and our clients are all referred to us through other agencies or through the justice system itself. So what we do is hopefully give them the tools and the guidance and the access to opportunities to keep them from feeling a need to go back into that way of life.
Well, and let's be honest. I mean, there's no one way to do this, I guess, is what I'm saying. And you do want to give people a second chance. And Safer Foundation really seems to want to underline that, is that there is potential out there, and it's very untapped potential.
That's it exactly. It's all about, from what we have the potential to offer is providing access and providing opportunity, and making sure that the individuals that come to us are aware of the fact that there is a future beyond where they have been or outside of their neighborhood. So all of our goals and objectives are targeted at that, including this new grant that we have. We'll be working toward that goal.
And let's talk about that new grant, because it also involves partners that you have, almost a good educational system in order to get people back to being active members of society.
Yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity from the Department of Labor. As you mentioned, we've got a lot of partners that we work with in the community. We're co-chairs of an organization called QC Advocates for Second Chances, which involves, I believe, upwards of 30 area agencies and organizations, but all with that goal of providing an opportunity for a real future and a safer community.
Yeah, let's be honest. I mean, that's really good to underline that as well, is that you help a kid or a young adult get a better handle on their own life. And not only does it impact them, it impacts their family, it impacts their future family, it impacts the community, and it impacts the future of the community. Absolutely.
And this particular program that will start around the first of the year is targeted at young adults that have been involved in the justice system or have been justice impacted, as we say. And one of the restrictions, or I shouldn't say restrictions, it's an opportunity. One of the requirements of this particular grant is that we work with local community colleges and help them in capacity building to specifically address this audience and this challenge. And what that can mean, we have these relationships regardless, but this provides us an opportunity to work with them to help build out some of the offerings that they already have, to give them the opportunity to expand the types of programs that they offer, and that include, when I say types, I mean also the structure. They're going to be targeted for a shorter term because this population needs to get in and get through, get credentialed and get out. They are scheduled to be at different times of day if possible. They're scheduled to have staggered starts because our population, our clients, aren't just waiting for the start of the semester. When we get with them and we work with them, we really need to have access for that next step, and oftentimes education and training is that next step.
See, and you and I both understand that very, very well. But as you well know, is that some of the people that are in the system hate going to school. I mean, part of the reason why they might be in crime is because they dropped out and they found, let's just say, as my mom used to say, a rougher crowd to hang around with. So, I mean, is that difficult? I mean, we're talking about a better education. You and I both understand that. The audience that we're talking to understands that as well. But the people who are repeat offenders may not see it that way.
It is a huge factor. Some of the individuals that we work with, we have a program called the Youth Empowerment Program, and it is that particular program is targeted at 16 to 18-year-olds that have disengaged from the school system. And they likely will never return.
Right.
So our goal is to prop them up, give them the tools, life skills, and education that they need during the session that they're with us, and give them access. So many of them don't. You kind of hinted at it, Jim. They don't see a future beyond where they are today. Many of them in this program, but also individuals that have been incarcerated and that are older, really have real trauma that has driven them to the life that they're in and to the situation that they find themselves in.
Well, and let's be honest, because of that, it takes what they say is it takes a community to raise a child. So, I mean, obviously it's not just what your efforts are, but you also have other groups that are also responsible for trying to change the mindset of some of these children and young adults. How do you know, and I'm sure you've got great personal stories, that what you're doing is working?
Yeah, it's hard to measure. We do. That is something, I guess, a benefit of having SAFER being part of a larger organization. Our headquarters are in Chicago, and much of our operations are based in there. shortly after they began in the mid 70s, they opened offices here in the Quad Cities, Rock Island, which then later expanded to the Iowa side of the river. But they the opportunity that we present, that ability that's built into our system to track and to measure what it is we do, and that is inbound as well as outbound. It's also measuring which approaches are most successful. And some of this is dictated by the grants that we receive. We have wonderful financial partners on the local, state, and federal level, as well as private donors. The United Way is a wonderful partner with us as well. But the grants that come in often have not contingencies, but requirements for their purposes for measuring and for tracking. So for instance, we have a program through the Department of Justice called Achieving Change Together. And one of the factors in that particular program is connecting with an outside research organization, in our case through the University of Nebraska, that will measure the effects of two different programs, two different cognitive behavioral programs that we have with individuals, and seeing which one works. So we're not only having an impact on those individuals here locally in our community, the results of that particular grant and that study will then have impact, nationally and in other markets. The Department of Labor grant that we're working with, that contingent of helping expand the community colleges is just is another bonus and an opportunity. It gives instant legitimacy to the efforts that we're making and makes it easy for the community colleges then to partner with large employers and large manufacturers here. And that's something that we'll see come out of that Department of Labor grant, where Eastern Iowa Community Colleges, Blackhawk College, we'll partner with employers to make sure that they're engaged and they're on board and that we're taking advantage of the latest and greatest that they have for our clients.
Brian Monroe, Resource Development Director with Safer Foundation. On the air, on the radio, on the web, on your mobile device, and streaming on your computer. Thanks for taking some time to join us as we talk about the issues on the cities.
Wheelan Presley Funeral Home and Crematory, a proud supporter of WQPT, has been serving Quad City families since 1889. They now have live stream capabilities for viewing your loved one's funeral or memorial service.
At IHM VCU, we've always been here for you. You are and always will be our top priority. We care about your financial and physical health, and we are here. IHM VCU is a proud supporter of WQPT.